A few weeks ago, I was struggling to keep my ranch afloat. The drought made it tough, and the feed prices were climbing. It was a rough time. One evening, I went to check on the cattle like any other night. That's when I noticed some strange lights flickering by the old well. At first, I thought it was my neighbor's equipment, but something felt off. The way the lights danced in the twilight nagged at me. Something inside me pushed me to take a closer look. As I walked toward the well, my heart raced. The air felt oddly still. I could hear the distant mooing of my cattle and the creaking of the barn. A chill went down my spine. The lights flickered out, leaving me in darkness. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I should call out or turn back. I thought maybe it was just my imagination. Still, something deep inside told me I needed to know what was going on. Later that night, sleep wouldn't come. I could hear whispers coming from the well. They were low and muffled, almost like they were calling my name. I told myself it was the wind, but as the nights passed, those whispers got louder and clearer. It was like they were pulling me in, and I was scared. Was I losing my mind? The land felt alive now, like it held secrets I didn't understand. I started to notice the cattle acting strange, too. They wouldn't settle down. My daughter began waking up, crying. She'd scream about shadows in the field. "Daddy, the shadows are coming!" I felt helpless. One night I sat my family down to talk. I think I wanted to sound brave for them. I tried to explain, but they could see the fear in my eyes. Deep down, I knew I wasn't even scratching the surface of it all. A few nights later, I found myself back at the well again. I couldn't help myself. It was like I was being drawn in. This time I took a flashlight. I stood by the well, feeling the weight of the silence around me. The air was thick with unease. I could hear the whispers again, more frantic this time. They sounded like they were inside my head. I took a deep breath and yelled out, "Who's there?" My voice echoed back, swallowed by silence. Then I saw it. A figure stood beyond the beam of my flashlight. He just stared at me. I opened my mouth to ask if he was okay, but nothing came out. My heart raced as I looked away for just a moment to grab my phone. When I turned back, he was gone. What happened next? I can't tell if it was real or just my mind breaking under stress. I can't shake the feeling that something dark was lurking on my land that night. I replay it in my mind all the time. What really went on? What secrets does this land hold? This question sticks with me like a splinter. I wish I could forget, but I know the whispers are still there waiting. The next morning I woke up feeling like a fog had settled in my brain. I couldn't shake the image of that figure staring at me. My daughter was still sleeping, her tiny face peaceful. I didn't want to wake her, but I also didn't want her to see the worry etched on mine. I grabbed my coffee and stepped outside, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. As I walked toward the barn, something caught my eye. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, but no, it was a footprint. It was larger than any I had ever seen on my property. I crouched down, examining it closely. The shape was unusual, almost human, but not quite. My heart began to race again. Had someone been on my land at night? I brushed the dirt away to see if there were more, but it seemed to stop right there. I had to know more. I couldn't ignore it. I took a deep breath and decided to head toward the well again. The whispers in my head echoed louder now. I wondered if anyone else had seen or heard anything strange. My neighbor, Jack, was the closest. Maybe I could talk to him. Jack tended to be gruff, but he had been around long enough to know the land. When I walked over to his place, something felt off. His cattle were restless, pacing the fence as if they sensed something. I knocked on his door, but it took a while for him to answer. When he finally did, his expression was blank. There was something wrong with him. "What do you want?" he asked, barely making eye contact. "Jack, have you noticed anything strange around here? Lights or shadows?" I couldn't mask my concern. He frowned. "Not really," he muttered, but I caught the flicker of something in his eyes. Was it fear? Why? I hesitated. I didn't want to sound crazy, but I needed to tell him about the figure. I opened my mouth, but before the words could leave, a loud crack echoed from behind his barn. Jack jumped. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. "What was that?" I asked, my heart pounding. Jack shook his head slowly. "I don't know. It's probably just the wind." But I could see the doubt in his eyes. I pushed him. "Let's check it out." We walked cautiously toward the barn, the unease creeping back. It felt like we were descending into a pit of darkness. The wind picked up, and I swore I heard the whispers again, louder now, mingling with the sound of rustling leaves. Jack looked nervous, but we continued, inching closer to the source of the noise. Then everything went still. I stopped in my tracks. A movement caught my eye out of the corner of my vision. That's when I saw it, shining faintly beneath the barn. There was something glimmering in the dirt. "What is that?" I whispered. Jack stepped back. "I don't want to find out." But I had to know. The whispers urged me forward. I knelt down, my hands shaking as I brushed away the dirt. What if it was something terrible? What if I was unearthing something that should have stayed buried? The moment I uncovered it, I froze. My heart dropped. It wasn't just some old artifact. I had found something linked to those whispers, and I had a feeling it would raise more questions than answers. I didn't know it yet, but that discovery would change everything for me, and I was about to learn the hard way that some secrets were meant to stay hidden. I felt a chill run down my spine as I uncovered the object. It was a small, rusted key covered in dirt and grime. I couldn't tell what it opened, but somehow I knew it was significant. The whispers grew louder in my mind, almost desperate to communicate something. I glanced over at Jack, hoping for some sort of reassurance, but he looked as if he was about to bolt. "What are you going to do with that?" he finally asked, his voice shaky. I held it tightly in my palm, feeling the cool metal against my skin. "I don't know yet," I said, though a part of me knew I had to understand its purpose. But it could lead to answers. Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe some things are better left alone." Ignoring his warning, I stood up and brushed my hands off. The key could be a clue, a way to explain the figure from my dreams or the restless cattle. "Do you know of any old locks around here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jack shook his head, annoyance flickering across his face. "You just found that in the dirt. Why would you assume it's important?" I didn't have a good answer, just an instinct that something wasn't right. "I just feel like we should at least look." Before he could respond, the quiet was shattered again. A loud crash echoed from inside the barn. It sounded like something large had fallen. Jack's eyes widened, and panic flickered in them. "I think we should get out of here," he whispered. But curiosity drove me closer rather than away. I moved towards the barn door, feeling the urge to confront whatever lay inside. Jack stayed behind, far too afraid to follow, but I couldn't back down now. This felt like a turning point. I opened the barn door cautiously, and the stale air hit me like a wall. My heart hammered in my chest. The sunlight streamed in, illuminating the scattered hay and old tools. But it was the far corner of the barn that caught my attention. Something was off about it. As I moved deeper, I caught a glimpse of darkness pooling in the shadows. I could hear my breath echoing, mixing with the rustling from inside. It didn't take long for me to realize it was coming from behind a stack of old crates. Hesitating, I stepped closer. That's when I heard it, a low growl that sent icy tendrils of fear slipping down my back. I froze. Whatever was behind those crates was watching me. "Jack!" I called out, my voice trembling. "You need to take a look at this." He peeked around the doorframe, eyes wide but reluctant. "Maybe we should just leave," he urged softly, as if talking too loud would unleash whatever was lurking. But I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I took a deep breath and reached out, ready to move the crates aside. As soon as I gripped one, the growl morphed into a sharp snarl, and my stomach dropped. I quickly pulled my hand back, heart racing. "Jack, it's not just the wind," I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. Suddenly, the crates toppled over, revealing something shifting in the dark. I couldn't see it clearly yet, but the shape was large and menacing. As it emerged, I realized I had uncovered more than secrets buried in the earth. I had stirred something that had been slumbering, and now it wanted to be free. The air felt thick with tension, and I knew we were moments away from confronting whatever it was that had haunted my nights. I had no idea if I was ready for this. But one thing was certain. Answers were coming, and they might lead to a terrible truth I was not prepared to face. The shadows shifted, and I could finally make out the shape that lurked behind the crates. A large, beastly silhouette emerged, its fur matted with dirt and grime. I took a step back, the key slipping from my fingers and clattering onto the wooden floor. My heart raced, and I felt the urge to flee, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. "What is that?" Jack whispered, his voice barely audible as he crept closer, curiosity battling his fear. His initial panic seemed to fade, replaced by a mix of awe and dread. I opened my mouth to respond, but found no words. The creature before us was like nothing I had ever seen. Its eyes glowed a muted yellow, reflecting the light like two predatory stars. It stared at us with an intensity that made my skin crawl, as if it was sizing us up, gauging if we were threats or prey. "Back up," I finally said, my voice shaky. I instinctively moved behind Jack, despite my earlier bravado. The instinct to protect myself overwhelmed my initial urge to confront the unknown. The creature let out a low growl, vibrating through the barn as if it were a warning. Then it took a step forward, and I felt a surge of panic shoot through me. "We need to get out of here," I urged, wanting to bolt away from this thing that emerged from my nightmares. But Jack stood frozen, fascination sparkling in his eyes. "Wait, maybe it won't hurt us. Look at it, it seems scared too," he said, his voice a strange blend of wonder and fear. My heart sank at his words. There was a truth in them, but I couldn't shake the terror that coursed through me. Just then, the creature lunged forward, baring its teeth, and I screamed. It was a split-second decision. I turned and ran, pushing past Jack, who finally snapped out of his daze and followed me outside. We stumbled into the bright daylight, the barn behind us enveloped in shadows tinged with menace. I could hardly catch my breath, my lungs burning. "What was that thing?" Jack gasped, glancing back nervously as if expecting the creature to chase after us. "I don't know, but it looked like something from a horror movie," I replied, still trying to comprehend what I had just experienced. My fingers instinctively fumbled for the rusted key I had dropped, panic rising as I realized it was still back inside, near that monster. "Are you insane?" Jack shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We can't go back in there." "I have to get it," I said, my determination surging. "What if it's the key to understanding everything? The cattle, the dreams, all of it." "More like the key to getting you killed," Jack snapped back. Just then, a loud crash echoed from within the barn, startling us both. It sounded like the creature had emerged from the darkness, possibly following our scent. The growl reached our ears again, this time louder and more furious. We glanced at each other, fear painting our faces, and then I saw it. Just past the barn door, a deeper shadow loomed, amalgamating into something more than just a figment of my imagination. It seemed intent on finding us. "Jack, run!" I screamed, and together we sprinted towards the fence line, desperate to put as much distance as possible between us and whatever we had disturbed. I knew somewhere tucked away was that rusted key, but in this moment I ran for my life, unaware that the true answers were waiting for us in those dark corners. We ran, my feet pounding against the ground as adrenaline surged through my veins. I didn't look back, but Jack's nervous glances over his shoulder told me he was just as terrified as I was. I had no plan, no clear idea of what to do next. We just needed to put distance between ourselves and the barn. As we reached the fence line, we veered right, heading toward the trees that lined the outskirts of the property. The branches beckoned like fingers, offering an escape route. "We can hide in there!" I shouted, urging Jack forward. We ducked into the cover of a cluster of thick brush. My heart still raced, and I pressed my back against the rough bark of a nearby tree to steady myself. We stood in silent agreement, our breath mingling with the rustling leaves around us. "Do you think it followed us?" Jack whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't know," I admitted, glancing back toward the barn. The sunlight filtered through the trees, but it felt like darkness loomed over the structure, suffocating and ominous. "I can't believe we just ran into that thing," Jack continued, nervously running a hand through his hair. "What was it? An animal? Something far worse than that," I interrupted, trying to shake off the feeling of impending doom. "And the key? It might be the answer. We need to go back. I need to get it." Jack stared at me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and concern. "You can't be serious. Did you see the way it lunged at us? That creature wants to eat us." I swallowed hard, grappling with my thoughts. The key was important. I could feel it deep down, but the risk felt monumental. "I know, but it could unlock everything. The cattle, my dreams, they all connect somehow. We can't ignore it." Before he could respond, a noise broke through the stillness around us, a low, rumbling growl echoing from the barn. It sent a chill racing down my spine. "It's still out there," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "What now?" Jack asked, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to think this through," I said, scanning the area for any sign of safety. The idea of returning to that barn felt increasingly insane, yet the lure of the key gnawed at my thoughts. I couldn't just leave it behind. Just then I noticed something glinting in the dirt close to the barn, a flash of rusted metal. My heart leapt. "Wait, did you see that?" I pointed. "See what?" "There's something by the entrance. It looked like metal. Maybe it's the key." I felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. If I could just grab it, maybe all of this would make sense. "But the creature," Jack began, his voice trailing off. I could see the conflict in his eyes. "Stay here. I'll be quick," I decided, steeling myself. Before Jack could argue, I took a deep breath and slipped out of the bushes, the trees providing little comfort against the rising fear. I crept towards the barn, staying as low as possible. Every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself sought to swallow me whole. The growling grew louder, my pulse quickening as I neared the entrance. That's when I saw it, the hulking shadow shifting just inside the barn doors. I froze, my heart racing. I realized I had stepped into something much darker than I could have imagined. The secrets of this place were not just buried, they were alive, and I was about to find that out firsthand. I took a breath, steadying myself against the thump of my heart. Whatever was shifting in the shadows of the barn, I had to act. I couldn't turn back now. The key might be the only way to make sense of everything. Slowly, I peered inside. The dim light revealed hay scattered across the ground and old tools hanging from the walls, but the thing that moved was still hidden. I took a small step forward, hoping to see more. Maybe I could pinpoint where it was. Maybe I could... Suddenly, the growl escalated into a snarl, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the barn walls. My breath caught in my throat as I pulled back instinctively. A tingle of fear coursed through me, almost paralyzing. I glanced back toward the trees where Jack hid. "Jack!" I almost screamed his name, but held back, afraid I might draw attention. The growl had faded to a low mumble, but the silence that followed felt thick with tension. The glint of metal still caught my eye. What if it really was the key? Could it be worth the risk? I looked back at the barn, dread pooling in my stomach. I needed to see inside. Treading carefully, I stepped closer to the barn doors, squinting through the crack between them. That's when I saw it, a pair of eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They were watching me. The creature was larger than I had imagined, with dark fur and a long, lean body. It shifted slightly, revealing jagged teeth that gleamed as a grin stretched across its face. Panic surged through me, and I took a step back, heart pounding like a hammer. I could hear Jack whispering from the trees. "What do you see?" Panic tinged his voice. I felt a knot form in my chest. The creature looked almost curious, as if it were analyzing me. I could turn and run, but the metal thing was still there, waiting. I chanced one last glance at the barn entrance. The creature was distracted, sniffing the air, searching. I took a risk. Quietly as possible, I crouched low and slipped inside, heart racing at the thought of what might happen next. The growl had ceased, replaced by the sound of my breath as I crept further into the barn. Every instinct yelled at me to turn back, but I squinted toward the floor, searching for that flash of metal. The tension mounted with every step. I felt trapped between fear and the deep lure of discovery. Just then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a rusty key lying next to a pile of old hay. "That's it," I whispered. It shimmered faintly, taunting me, almost glowing in the darkness. I reached out, trembling. As my fingers brushed against the cold metal, the growl returned, louder, fiercer. Panic bubbled up again. I grabbed the key and turned to exit, but the creature had shifted back into view. This time it stood, muscles taut and ready to spring. I had woken it. A sudden crash from somewhere deeper in the barn startled me, and the creature turned its gaze towards the sound. My chance. I darted toward the entrance, heart pounding, but before I could escape, the hulking shadow lunged forward, cutting off my path. I froze, paralyzed by fear. Something was happening, and I was caught in the middle of it. I had the key, but would I ever make it out alive? I stood there, clutching the key with sweaty fingers as the creature blocked my escape. It growled lowly, its breath heavy and hot, each exhale a warning. My mind raced. Should I try to swing the key at it? What would Jack do? But that thought faded quickly. I couldn't think of Jack, not now. I had to focus on staying alive. I backed away slowly, hoping to make my exit without alerting it further. Every inch felt like a gamble. The creature's eyes glinted as it watched my every move. Then came the crash again, louder this time. I turned slightly, and in that moment the creature lunged. I stumbled sideways, instinct taking over. I nearly tripped over a stack of hay bales and flung myself into a narrow gap behind them. My heart was pounding in my ears, drowning out the growl that followed. I pressed my back against the wall, breathing shallowly, hoping it would lose interest. Peeking around the edge, I could see the creature sniffing the air, probing for my scent. The rustle of the hay being disturbed made my chest tighten. What had caused that noise? My curiosity flared again, despite the fear clawing at me. Were there more creatures in here? I scanned the barn, desperate for answers. The beams above creaked under some unseen weight. My palms were slick against the key now, and I had to fight the urge to drop it. That was when I noticed something glinting higher up, catching the sparse light. I squinted, and my heart dropped as I recognized the smooth surface of a silver lock attached to an old wooden chest. Whatever it held felt important, maybe crucial for understanding this nightmare. Just then I heard a faint hiss. The creature had found its focus again, turning back toward my hiding place. Fear, thick and choking, seized my throat. It was looking for me, and I was trapped. Lunging for the opening to the next area of the barn seemed impossible. I couldn't risk it. The tension grew as I weighed my options. I could try to slip out the back, taking the chance the creature wouldn't pursue me, or I could confront it, give in to the fear, and risk everything for that lock and the mystery it promised. Hesitation lingered as the creature took another step closer. I could almost hear my own heartbeat mingling with the growl that filled the air. Then, unexpectedly, I heard a voice from outside. "Hey! Over here!" It was Jack. His voice echoed, laden with urgency, snapping me back to reality. The creature turned its head at the sound, momentarily distracted. My chance! I bolted from my hiding spot, aiming for the barn door, the key clutched tightly in my fist. I sprinted past the creature, bracing myself for the inevitable strike. But just as I thought it would leap, I dove to the side, barely dodging its attack. I crashed through an opening in the barn wall, tumbling into the damp earth outside. I scrambled to my feet, breathless, but there was no time to recover. I turned and ran toward the trees where Jack had called, my heart racing not just from fear, but from the rush of what I had seen. The barn loomed behind me, dark and foreboding. Just as I reached the edge of the woods, a voice broke through the chaos. "Did you get it?" Jack's eyes widened at the sight of the key in my hand. "Yes, but—" I hesitated. Could I tell him? "There's something in there. Something dangerous." Before I could explain further, we heard the growl again. It echoed from the barn, reminding us that the night was far from over. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I turned to Jack, who was fidgeting nervously, his gaze fixed on the barn. "We need to get out of here," I urged, but I didn't move. My curiosity about the chest and its lock tugged at me, even as the creature's growl throbbed in the background. Jack's face was pale, his eyes darting around, as if expecting the creature to leap out at any moment. "What do you mean, something dangerous? What did you see?" I swallowed hard. "There's a creature in there, Jack. I barely escaped. But there's also a chest. I think it might hold some answers." I felt a weight settle in my stomach. Would it be worth the risk to go back? The growl echoed again, sharper now, harsher. It snapped me out of my thoughts. "We can't go back," Jack insisted, pulling me back toward the tree line. "Whatever that thing is, it won't stop." As much as I wanted to agree with him, I sensed that the key and the chest were tied to everything going on. I needed to understand. "What if we can find something to defend ourselves?" I suggested. "If we don't look, we might regret it." Jack frowned, glancing over his shoulder again. "You're going to risk your life for a chest. We need to warn someone." But his words fell flat for me. The idea of leaving without confronting what was inside felt wrong. What if it holds a clue to stopping whatever that creature is? Before he could respond, the barn creaked ominously. Shadows shifted within, and a dark figure emerged from the entrance. My heart dropped. It wasn't just the creature. Other shapes followed, silhouettes that filled the doorway like a swarm. "What the hell is that?" Jack exclaimed, backing up against me, nearly knocking me off my feet. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. They were not quite human, at least not fully, ragged forms with hollow eyes. They seemed to absorb the darkness around them. I felt an icy grip-bake fear worse than any growl could. "Run!" I yelled, shoving Jack away from the emerging figures. We burst back into the woods, our only thoughts to escape the nightmare creeping from the barn. Branches snagged at my clothes as we dashed through the underbrush. "What was that?" Jack gasped, his breathing matching my frantic pace. "I don't know," I shouted back, "but we can't stop. We need to find help." Then everything went dark. It wasn't instant, but slowly. One moment the moonlit path loomed ahead of us, and the next shadows swallowed all light. I stumbled to a halt, disoriented. "Did you see that?" But Jack stood frozen in place. I turned to look at him, but instead found myself eye to eye with one of the hollow figures. Its gaze pierced through me, an otherworldly intensity that lingered beyond anything I could handle. "Jack!" I screamed, my voice breaking. I didn't wait. I bolted deeper into the forest, my thoughts racing. What had I just unleashed? With every harsh breath, the realization struck me. I had to face whatever was happening. I couldn't hide from it, even if it terrified me. As I stumbled through the thick foliage, I thought back to the chest. Inside it, maybe there was a means to fight back. Maybe it held secrets that could help us survive. But I had no idea what I'd really uncovered, or what awaited me when I returned to the barn. Would it even be safe to go back? I nodded to myself with determination as I ran. I had to find out. I crashed through the underbrush, the weight of what I had just seen fueling my adrenaline. My mind raced with questions, but one stood out above the rest. Was Jack safe? I had left him back there, and the thought gnawed at me. I couldn't let his fate rest in the hands of that creature or the hollow figures. I slowed down, forcing myself to breathe. The forest enveloped me, shadows stretching around the towering trees. I had to think. My feet thudded softly against the ground, and I strived to tune into what surrounded me. If I could just calm my racing heart, I might hear something, maybe Jack calling for me. Then I heard it. A faint rustling, almost like whispers. I crouched low, straining to catch the sound again. It didn't come from ahead. No, it was behind me. Fear prickled at my skin as I turned slowly, every instinct telling me to run. Instead, I focused. I was tired of being chased. If there were creatures out there, I needed to be ready. I dug my hands into the dirt, hoping earlier thoughts of finding a weapon hadn't been a mistake. I'd have to return to the barn, no matter what awaited me. But I had to find Jack first. I scanned the trees, searching for him or any sign that he had escaped as well. "Jack!" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. Silence stretched thick and suffocating. Then I saw a flicker of movement to my left. It was more than a shadow. It was a figure. My breath caught. At first, it looked like one of those hollow forms, but as it stepped into a beam of moonlight, I realized it was human. "Jack!" I called, my voice trembling. The figure froze. For a moment I felt hope surge within me, but it was quickly snuffed out when I noticed his eyes were wide and frightened. He appeared staggered, his breath ragged. "Get away!" he shouted, backing up. "Wait! It's me! I'm not one of them!" Jack blinked, confusion flickering across his face. Then, without warning, he turned and bolted deeper into the woods. I felt my heart drop. "Jack, no!" I yelled, chasing after him, dodging branches and low-hanging vines. I finally caught up to him when he stumbled, crashing to the ground. I knelt beside him, panting. "It's okay! It's me! They're not here, at least not now." "They're everywhere," he gasped. "I saw them in the shadows." I could see the panic in his eyes. It was the same terror that had gripped me. "I know, but we can't hide forever. We need to get back to that barn. There might be something in the chest that can help us." He shook his head violently, and his voice cracked. "No, that place is cursed. We should be getting out of here." For a second, doubt crept under my skin. What if he was right? But another part of me felt this urgency, a magnetic pull back to the barn. If we don't uncover what's in that chest, we might not be able to escape what we're facing. That's when he whispered something that chilled me to the bone. "They're looking for you." I felt a presence shift behind me, a heaviness in the air. The unease was palpable as I turned my head slowly. The shadows at the edge of the trees seemed to shift, solidifying into more figures. "We need to go," I said urgently, dragging Jack to his feet. But as we turned to run, more darkness enveloped us, pulling us deeper into this nightmare. Was this what awaited anyone who dared to uncover the truth? I had to find out. I had to face it all, even if it cost me everything. I blinked, my heart pounding in my chest as shadows shifted around us, whispering through the branches, closing in. Jack yanked on my arm, pulling me to the right, where the trees offered a brief opening. "We need to hide," he hissed, his voice trembling with panic. We ducked behind a thick cluster of brush, listening intently for any signs that the figures had followed us. The forest was alive with their whispers, disembodied voices running cold through the air. There was no denying it now. What lay ahead was not the work of mere imagination or stress from struggling to keep the ranch afloat. These entities felt ancient, lurking just beyond the reach of understanding, and now they were circling like vultures. "How do we get out of this?" Jack gasped, his breath shaky. "I don't know," I admitted, gritting my teeth, "but we have to go back for the key and the chest. They hold answers." "The chest?" he echoed. "You're not serious, are you?" "I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it could unlock something. If we don't confront this now, we'll never be free from it, whatever it is." His eyes darted back towards the ominous shadows, and for a moment I thought he might try to run again. Instead, he nodded slowly, fear mixing with resolve. "Okay, but we need a plan." I took a breath, searching my thoughts for any strategy. If we can create a distraction, maybe we can slip back inside and search for the chest. The key's our path to understanding. Jack looked doubtful, but I could see the flicker of determination in his gaze as well. "What about them?" he whispered, pointing toward the dark figures that lingered at the edge of the forest, their hollow eyes piercing through the night. I swallowed hard. They seemed to be drawn to fear. We need to act like we're not scared, at least not too scared. With a shaky exhale, I thought of the barn. The dark creature was probably waiting there, guarding the chest. But keeping our heads amidst the mounting panic in my chest felt impossible. We would have to draw just enough attention away from the front of the barn to sneak around through the back. "Okay," I said, noticing more shadows shift unseen. "On 3, we'll make a break for it." Jack nodded, clenching his fists. 1, 2, 3. We plunged into the clearing, racing towards the barn while the whispers heightened, turning frantic in their pitch. I could hear the rustle of unseen figures moving, but I focused solely on the barn's dark wooden doors, half closed but beckoning. The creature's growl rumbled within just as we reached the edge, sending a shock of terror running through me. "Quick!" I hissed. Slipping through a side opening, we stepped into the hazy darkness of the barn. My heart raced. "Where's the chest?" I breathed, scanning the space, looking for that glint of the lock. Jack was close behind, his eyes wide. "I don't see it. It was—" The words caught in my throat as the growl intensified. My heart sank. Where had it gone? Then a crash came from the back corner. I turned, and my stomach twisted. There, half hidden behind some old crates, was the creature, the very same that had almost devoured me just moments ago. It shifted, menacing and alert, but instead of charging, it remained still, its eyes fixed on something out of sight. "Over there!" I pointed, noticing dark wood just visible through the growing shadows. With trembling legs, I diverted my attention to where the chest, hidden away in the shadows, glimmered faintly. The creature's growl morphed into a deep rumble, as if sensing our presence. What could it be watching? The corner of my eye caught movement, hollow figures materializing. They surged forward, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "Now we have to go!" I yelled, grabbing Jack's arm. We sprinted deeper into the barn, dodging crates, debris, and evil intent like ghostly specters looming at our backs. I pounded toward the chest, fear giving me momentum. The world blurred around me, the light from outside flickering dimly and then slapped by darkness. In the chaos of movement, I collided against the chest, knocking it from its resting place. The glint of the lock shone brilliantly amidst the shadows. "Help me!" I gasped, pulling at the lock as the creature growled, inching toward us. I couldn't focus on it. I could feel its breath, hot and rancid, against the back of my neck. My fingers fumbled on the rusted key, slick with sweat. Jack stood behind me, fear evident. "What if it breaks open a doorway?" he whispered, but I didn't have time to ponder that. I had to push through the dread. With a fierce determination, I plunged the key into the lock, twisting with all my strength. A breath of air escaped the chest, swirling around me as the lock clicked. Everything went white. At first, it felt as if I was standing in an empty void, but then words flooded my mind like a distant memory. They whispered truth, wrapped in riddles. The shadows around me recoiled, their whispers transforming into echoes. I gripped the key tightly, my heart racing in my chest as I faced the swirling, encompassing darkness. And then I understood. What I had stumbled upon wasn't only a creature or a chest. It was a veil between worlds, between the secrets buried on my land and the living memories trapped beyond. And amid this blinding radiance, answers awaited me, but they would not come easily. I felt something push at my consciousness, urging me to make a choice. What was I willing to confront? What was I ready to sacrifice to know what lay behind the shadows? With every ounce of courage I could muster, I whispered into the void, "I need to know. I need to fight." And just like that, pieces of my world began to unravel. The darkness ebbed away, and when the light receded, I found myself standing in the barn once more, except it was empty now, devoid of life. I could hear the remnants of the growl fade into the air, leaving only silence. Had I escaped? Was it over? Did I grasp the truth, or merely scratch the surface of it? I glanced to Jack, who had fallen behind, staring at the empty space where the hulking creature once stood. "What just happened?" he breathed, incredulous. "I don't know," I managed, heart thudding against my ribs, "but I think we've only just begun to uncover the truth." Renewed determination surged within me, but I also felt a nagging sense of uncertainty. Whatever had just happened had changed everything, but it held questions that lingered, unanswered, waiting in the shadows. And as the wind whispered through the barn, I felt the weight of what lay ahead, both a promise of answers and the cost they would extract. I turned to Jack, who looked ready to bolt again, and steeled myself for what might come next. Whatever this land held, it wasn't going to let me go easily. I felt the embers of the unknown smouldering, beckoning me into the dark corners, yet unchallenged. The only way forward was through.